Hello and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. Today I wanted to roam around the garden and show what it is about the plants that I love so much that I keep as many of them as I do. It's my back porch. This is my pergola and I keep this kind of wood lattice. FYI, this wood lattice that's up here, that's hanging up here, is just the most useful garden thing ever. So I just have it laying on top of my pergola and I hang a bunch of the plants there. And you can see that there's filtered light going through here right now. I bought the house this way and whoever put this stuff in had the intent of actually having like a sauna out here. And so they kind of enclosed it. They would prefer more light than this. This is actually north facing, if this gives you an idea. And on the east side, there is the wall from the house, and on the south side there is the wall from the house, and so it's really very enclosed, and the only light it will get is light coming from the top, and that generally is kind of in the afternoon evening-ish time period. So this is a little too filtered of light. They will grow okay under here, but they would definitely prefer to be somewhere else. But I love coming out here. I love having coffee out here. I love sitting out here and like playing on my iPad or reading or whatever, or just, you know, like oogling the plants. It's just really fun to come and sit out here because it's beautiful. On the other side, there's some Schlumbergera plants hanging. Sometimes this happens with plant people. You just kind of discover something interesting about, you know, where you're like, huh, I didn't realize that I had that kind of affinity for that kind of plant. But as it turns out, I very much am a Rhipsaliana hybrid person. The true Christmas cactus or the Buckleyi hybrids, when I was doing a little bit of shopping the other day and I realized I was only purchasing Buckleyi hybrids, and then it occurred to me, oh my gosh, I prefer Buckleyi hybrids. Here's the walls that I'm talking about my house. There's some more truncata hybrids. And so all those are truncata hybrids, and that's kind of how I keep the bigger ones. I'll take when I move them outside. Inside, the bigger ones are a little bit of a problem because it's difficult to find room, and truthfully, the Schlumbergera truncata hybrids are the ones that can survive lower light and stuff and a little bit less good care. So that's just something to note. Here are some cool little grafts. I get these on eBay. There's just this, I think it's Super Shop 408 sells them. Pretty much seems to sell them all season long and has been doing it for a few years now. Pretty cool. I really like watching grafts grow. And so here you can see that there is Schlumbergera opuntioides, there is Hatiora herminiae, there is Schlumbergera lutea subspecies bradii, and there is Schlumbergera microsphaerica. So I've also seen them sell or auction off the grafted ones of cylindrica, as well as some of the exotica hybrids and some of the variegated hybrids. This guy is just my weirdest Rhipsalis. I don't know what's going on with this guy. This guy is so long that I don't know how or what to do here. This would be Rhipsalis teres form prismatica. This is the one that I always am like going, oh, what is it doing? It's just so weird. Still a very strange plant. And it's always kind of like, he just keeps kind of blooming. Little bits of blooms, little bits of blooms, little bits of blooms. It's kind of interesting. And something really weird is that inside, this would not form berries. But outside, it seems like maybe it is. I don't know. I'm going to have to kind of keep an eye on that. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You know, it's such a joy when you walk around and you look at them and you see like berries starting to form, or you see like new growth happening. Like over here, you know, we can see this is Rhipsalis clavata. It's the more like slender form. And so the segments are longer and stuff, but you can see how much growth, and it just is pretty. It's just fun to kind of wander around and look at that kind of stuff. Here we can see that this would be Kimnachia ramulosa. And so this guy just, he's like throwing out crazy berries. Blooms on this plant are not that remarkable. They're so small, but the berries are really cool. And I like how the veining is turning red here with all these berries. Really cool, really interesting. The guy is kind of exploding with like fun growth here. Here is the fun one that's out here. I believe that this is Rhipsalis elliptica. And really cool. Oh, you can see all these little buds that are forming. So this will be really exciting because this is really going to be, I think, the first one of this kind of form that I've ever had that has ever bloomed. Like in a large flush, I've had like a bloom here or there on a cutting, but yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. Beautiful plant. Here we can see these insane Disocactus species. So this would be the Disocactus biformis, you know, always just exploding in insane growth. The Disocactus species, these smaller ones, they are always just blah, you know, like huge exploding growth. It's really crazy. Here we have a Rhipsalis bacifera, and its berries are ripening. So I'm kind of enjoying that. This is the most attacked plant in my whole entire collection by mealybugs over the winter time. It's also growing, and I love watching these like insane growths here. And this one is subspecies, I don't know how to say it. I think it's like Martiana or something like that. But yeah, really cool. Love the little white berries that are forming. They're not really that small, to be honest, the berries. Whoa. It's kind of, I'm interested in this one here. This is something that I picked up from Tropiflora, and you know, looking at this, it very much has the growth that is a lot like a teres, but we'll have to see whatever this is. It's got these little flowers that are forming at the end here, and I mean, it very, very, very much has growth that is like a teres, like I said, but we'll see. Interesting little plant. Here's a cool one. Don't see this one very often because it's I've imported it from Germany before as well, but you don't see this one very often. This is Pfeiffera monacantha subspecies Kimnachia. I think that's how it's said. But this one's cool because he's forming all these little buds that are on here. Doesn't really grow as well as I thought it would, not for me anyway. But in any case, it's budding, so that's exciting. Here we just have this crazy amount of berries that are forming on this guy. This plant is so cool. I'm really glad that I bought this plant, regardless of not knowing what the heck it was when I bought it. This is Rhipsalis monacantha subspecies Kerbergii. And yeah, it's just a really cool plant. Likes to grow, likes to produce flowers and berries all over the place, as you can see. Really a cool plant. Here's a lovely, absolutely lovely, lovely fruit. This would be on Disocactus quiselticus. This has the most beautiful fruits of any of the Disocactus I have ever seen. The fruits on this are absolutely gorgeous, and they ripened very fast, much faster than any other Disocactus species I have ever seen. And the fruits also have probably like one of the better tasting of any of the fruits. It's got a kind of a mild blueberry-ish taste. It's really, really beautiful. I love watching this plant grow. So this is just Hatiora salicornioides, and I just really like watching it grow. It's always exploding with growth and doing crazy things. And I have a few of these, but this one is my favorite. This one is one that's a little bit more like pendant and bushy. This particular clone, really just a beautiful, beautiful plant. Here's just a little bit of a fun thing that there's actually little buds forming all over here, is that in my area, because it's a little bit cold outside, what happens is that whenever the Schlumbergera move outside, they're going from about a 10 to 15 degree difference from the indoors to the outdoors. And what it does is cause the truncata hybrids to just start blooming. So they'll start budding and they'll start blooming and stuff. It's really kind of interesting. So yeah, in the spring, I get another kind of odd flush from some of the truncata hybrids. Over here, we have my lovely little Weberocereus. I love my Weberocereus. This would be Weberocereus bradii. And I get a lot of joy out of watching these crazy clades grow. I love watching those lunatic clades because they're huge. Here, you can see about how big that is. They're just sort of massive. I think there's a little mealy bug that was on there. Yeah. These guys are just moving out, so what they're doing right now is they're kind of acclimatizing by the house here. I bought these little pot things off of Amazon because these plants, they are interesting because it is difficult to figure out how to grow them in more of a kind of indoor house setting and then move them indoors and outdoors, especially because this is going to get huge and it's going to want to hang. So I just bought these kind of crazy pots. There's another one, great big beautiful growth, absolutely love them. Frangiorum, about the same thing. Also, you know, it's got this beautiful growth that it put on indoor. It's also kind of like raw, so I just need to find some way of of making that manageable, which this is going to be, I think, manageable for a little while anyway. Not for forever, though. Here you can see I kind of have what is going on here. A little bit of a... this is so funny. This is just kind of like this Lepismium cruciform alley that I have going on here. But here's a beautiful Disocactus hybrid that has blooms and buds, and another one with blooms, another one with a bud on it coming in there. Here's something that's also really interesting. So this is, I guess it's generally a newer species. This would be Lepismium floribundum. I think that most people looking at this are like, oh, that looks like Lepismium cruciform. Flowers are pretty different. And the plant is a little bit different too. It looks like an intermediate between Lepismium hulucianum and Lepismium cruciform. And so its flowers are really interesting. But I just got it, and it came with these buds, and I'm so excited about this plant. Really, I'm excited to see the bloom, and apparently it's fragrant, so that'll be interesting. Here are two Pseudorhipsalis amazonica. These are subspecies Panamonensis, I believe. And this one bloomed just one flower indoors, which was kind of interesting. In case you were ever wondering, like, how big does my plant have to be? Maybe about that big. It could be a little bit smaller because I think there's a few plants that are in there actually. And this big crazy one here, I bought this one, I think just a few months ago, and it was kind of insane because someone was selling like really pretty substantial plants, and so that was really interesting, and I decided to buy one just to kind of see. And it's got buds. So cool. Yeah, so it's stuff like this. You wander around the garden and you're like, what is happening? It's very exciting. You can see there's a big maple tree, so it's always dropping these little seeds all over. It's kind of insane because I have to pick them out of everything because they do in fact sprout. So these right here, I didn't have this plant for a long time. It was one of those things where I think it was so common I just didn't really pick it up right away. And so this would be Rhipsalis Pfeiffera subspecies horrida. And when I saw this, I was like, now is the time, because I meant to pick it out, but this was crusted, so it was very interesting to me. And it was this great big thing that was just shoved into this pot. I mean, it was like, I just decided to like separate it and repot it and stuff and make three pretty little plants here. Here we have the Rhipsalidopsis hybrids, and no, I'm not comfortable calling them Schlumbergera yet, so I'm still just going to sit here and call them Rhipsalidopsis hybrids for now. My brain is just not, it's like malfunctioning on that. So in any case, you can see that what's really interesting about my area is they don't really bloom in the spring exactly. They kind of bloom in the summer instead. They do it, pretty much as soon as they start coming outside, and you'd be surprised at how much light I put these guys in. But I just move them outside and then I put them in very high light, and then they're like, boom, we're just going to start budding. I have kind of a meager little collection here, but a lot of them are budding. So it'll be really interesting to see because I have some unknowns. I have some really crazy curious ones. So stay tuned for that. Here's another bunch. And just so you know, because do I ever have issues? Absolutely. Look at this poor guy. So this is super sad little guy. So this is not the kind of thing that brings me joy, but it's one of those things where unfortunately there is kind of an interesting little balance issue that happens with these guys where, a plant that's this size, that's in that size of a pot, probably needs to be repotted, especially when you notice that it's suffering. The soil is drying out too quickly, and you're like having to water it and it's just getting kind of sad. Generally, this was an issue where I just did not repot that plant when it needed to be repotted. And what happened is it got too dry and then it got too wet, and now it's just tragically dying because it doesn't really have the roots to support it. There are ways to save this or, try to do something about it. This one, we'll see how that goes. I'm actually just going to kind of let this guy be because it's outside now. And so outside, it's very wet and humid here, and, and we'll see what happens. Chances are at least part of that plant will recover. Here we have one Rhipsalis alley. So I have like several Rhipsalis alleys that are going on here. This plant, I always love it every time I see this plant try to grow something. So it's trying to grow something here. This is the most pitiful little plant ever. This is actually Weberocereus tunilla, subspecies Bockleyi, I believe. Beautiful, beautiful Rhipsalis. I absolutely just love my Rhipsalis. Not all of these are Rhipsalis. This is Pfeiffera, one that I imported from Germany last year. It's growing beautifully. It's got all this beautiful little growth that's coming here. Again, it's stuff like this that you walk around and you see and you're just like, oh, that's so wonderful. You can see here is actually the more standard form of Rhipsalis clavata. Beautiful plant. Love that plant. You can see I've got some more salicornioides, and you can see the growth that it's putting on. That one's a little bit more upright than my other one. You can see lots of different kinds of Rhipsalis that are growing in here. So it's this kind of stuff. Like I walk around and I see these little weirdos. It's like, what is happening here? And this plant, it's always just such a weirdo. So this is definitely a teres. You can see it's just like raw. Here, let me put out my weird, insane little pommy growth here. I don't know. I think that this one, yeah, so I think that this one is also subspecies prismatica. And this one is always the one that's doing like the super crazy weird stuff. So yeah, that one's really crazy. And then beautiful, beautiful new growth like this. Look at how like hyper green this is. It's like almost neon green growth that's coming out of this here. So this one is Rhipsalis paradoxa subspecies septentrionalis. Really cool. So here's a really funny sea of just plants that are, like I said, this crazy wood lattice stuff, it has a lot of different purposes. And so what's going on here is I have this stacked on top of these cinder blocks here, and these pots, I think these are 2-inch pots or 3-inch pots or something. I don't know what they are. They're just the black nursery pots. And they pretty much just fit right in those squares perfectly. So it's a really fun way to kind of, I think, grow some of the smaller kids and stuff. So there's just kind of a sea of them, and there's lots of different things that are growing around in there. Here we have another Rhipsalis alley. So more Rhipsalis doing insane Rhipsalis things. You can see, I mean, and it's just the stuff that dreams are made of, man. Watching these little things do whatever this is, grow. I just love watching them do that. And there's so many of them, but here's this beautiful new growth on Rhipsalis pentaptera. Here is another Marchiana. Also, you can see they just throw out like crazy little growths. Here, you see this mystery plant. I keep seeing this plant sold as Rhipsalis dismilis. This is definitely not Rhipsalis dismilis. I've even seen the bloom on this plant. It's not Rhipsalis dismilis. I very strongly sort of and still suspect that this plant actually is a rather rare and kind of lost species here. I think it just fell victim to this horrible situation of misnaming. I do know what this is, but I forgot what it is. It is not Macrantha. I thought that it was Rhipsalis Macrantha, but it's not. But it grows really, really, really cool. And look at that. I love it. It's just like, roar. Likes to grow. Really a cool plant. It's like some really weird kind of smaller, bizarre form of one of the flat Rhipsalis. I think maybe like oblonga or something like that. But it's a cool, cool plant. I mean, I love watching them grow. They're so fun to watch them grow. Love it. Rhipsalis flacosa. Beautiful, beautiful growth. Love it, love it. Here are some more beautiful, beautiful, beautiful growth. So, I mean, look at how much growth this particular plant, this thing, it's really fun because, man, it really, really, really likes to grow. So, really cool plant. And here, once again, this is Rhipsalis sulcata. And once again, you can see just these sprays of like crazy growth that's coming out here. Just insane, insane growth. Just growing and growing and growing. Again, one of the joys, just absolute joy to grow Rhipsalis because they grow and grow and grow. Here we have an interesting one, Lepismium warmingianum. I don't particularly think that my little tiny dude here is indicative of how beautiful this plant can be. Trust me, this plant that grows very, very, very long. It has, I think, mostly I've seen it predominantly where it has 3-angled growth. Mine, for some reason, keeps producing flat growth, probably because it wasn't enough light. But here outdoors, what I've done is moved it into a very, very sunny area. Here we have a sea of Disocactus hybrids. I have a lot of Disocactus hybrids, by the way. And there's just like this sea of them. And, you know, what happens is that inside they start to produce buds and stuff under the grow lights in early spring, and then they will flower. And then whenever they come outside, if put in ample light, like these guys are generally put in some pretty good lighting, they will bud some more and bloom some more. And ones that can't bloom inside will start to bloom out here. So there's just kind of like this crazy bloomy thing that's happening here. So a lot of them have these buds. This one just kind of got done blooming. And there's just buds forming on lots of them. And some of them are really interesting. Like there are some kiwis that are budding for the first time, really exciting. I think yellow tang is over there with a bud on it. I think now one kiwi that I just really, really wanted that I can't seem to remember the name of is over there budding finally after years. So the Disocactus hybrids, the joy in them, I love watching them grow, but when they come out and then it's like, who's going to actually bud, you know, and you kind of walk around and then when you see like the surprise bud going on, you know, like yellow tang, I was like, oh, a bud, you know, you get really excited. So another really big joy, I think, of growing the epiphytic cacti. There you see a big flower that's over there. That flower is one of the Disocactus hybrids that I thought was broken. And by broken, I had the plant for years as a large plant and it just would not bloom. But that would be Crystal Flash. And it's got a beautiful flower, so well worth the wait. But here, once again, you know, we see like a sea of, it's like a drape of Rhipsalis. And so they're beautiful inside, but when they come outside, they are so much more beautiful to me. So here we have actually more of, this is not a Rhipsalis, this would be a Lepismium. So this is Lepismium lumbricoides. Not sure if I said that one right, but you can see it's got lovely new growth. Again, just love watching them grow. Here you see a Pfeiffera. It's one of the most beautiful Pfeiffera because it gets these like long, elegant hair-like. They're not all like that, by the way, but this one is beautiful. Here is another lumbricoides, different one, I believe. I don't believe these are the same, but there you go. Beautiful, beautiful growth coming out. Here we see more beautiful growth. I love the different shades of green. I love watching them grow. Here we have Rhipsalis holleri. Also, you can see the little growth coming out. Beautiful. Love seeing that guy grow. Here we see another Disocactus, once again, producing buds. This one never stops budding. It's actually a little bit of an alarming plant. So that is Dr. Professor Bockemühl. And yeah, that plant just never, ever, ever stops blooming. It just is kind of insane. And I had one before and it killed itself because it bloomed so much. So we'll see. Here we have another one that never, ever, ever stops blooming. So this one is the Disocactus hybrid Felcino Fairy. It's a Rudolf Hessing hybrid. One of my favorites because to date it is still the smallest Disocactus hybrid I have ever seen. And it always just throws out those beautiful little cheerful flowers, and you can see it's got more buds coming on the way, and it just had this huge flush of blooms in the basement. So that is one that just doesn't stop. And if you put them in good enough light, that's what happens. They just get really happy and they're like, I just want to bloom. So this right here may not look all that happy to people looking at this. However, this is an interesting thing. So Rhipsalis are easier, I think, than some of the other epiphytic cacti. So these all I imported from Germany this year. So I've said before, and I've said multiple times, like I tend to do one import from Germany every year. And so I imported these different Rhipsalis from Germany this year, and they don't travel well at all. These guys looked so much worse when they got here than they look now. So it's fun to watch them recover. So this one here is actually starting to grow, and they do it in record time. It's really interesting. So when Rhipsalis, when they're beyond recovery, they are beyond recovery. They will just straight up die on you. And I've had little bits of these die, but it's interesting whenever, you know, it's like you look at them and you think there's no way that can survive, but they do. Very, very resilient kind of plant. Here we have Lepismium hallucianum. Absolutely cool. Look at this guy. He's just like, I'm just gonna bloom now. So that's pretty exciting. This plant, it's interesting because Lepismium tend to want higher light. And so this guy, and this is one of the reasons that I know that, this guy indoors, he was in a south-facing window, but it was like he was just kind of struggling or whatever. And so then he starts throwing out these long growths with all these aerial roots because he's looking for something to climb. And so this guy's he's definitely needs to be repotted. After he does whatever, he needs to be repotted. But I mean, he is having his moment, that guy. So it's always super exciting whenever I wander around and I see, you know, them starting to produce new growth or starting to bud like that. It's just fascinating. This guy, you don't really see this guy very often, but he is such a cool plant, and I really wish that we saw him more. So this one is Pfeiffera, and forgive me for how I'm going to botch this, but Ianthole. And so, such a cool plant. You know, it's interesting because it grows, it looks like a porphyllum. So it looks like a Porocactus, Disocactus hybrid, which generally, it's an improper term, but we call them a porphyllum just casually. And yeah, it's really, really cool. I love the flowers on it. I love the way it grows. Kind of love everything about it. Dangerous because it has, you know, thicker, stiffer spines. So stuff like this is crazy. Stuff like this is just bananas. You see how red this plant is? This plant is so red. So some plants, it's just generally epiphytic cacti in general. Some of them, they get very, very red when you put them in the sun. And there's not that many Disocactus hybrids that do that. But this guy, he was doing it in the grow lights. He's doing it out in the sun. But you can also see, you know, very exciting buds. I don't know what this is. I purchased it because it had very strange branches. So it had branches that were lobed irregularly. Just a really cool plant. Crazy cool flushes of growth on some Porphyllum hybrids. Love that. These guys come out. You can see the one next to it. Very intense flushes of growth coming out on those. These guys, they kind of struggle here if you don't get them into very high light. So these guys will do really well in really small pots and very high light, and they will just kind of explode in growth. So these guys are in one of the sunniest places in my whole entire garden. So this would be Schlumbergera microsphaerica. This guy is growing on its own root system. Can't really explain why that guy decided to be as happy as he is, because not an easy plant to grow on its own root system, but for whatever reason, this particular one just decided to be real happy. These guys are kind of a struggle sometimes because they'll just be like, and just drop all of their clades. So fair warning, in 6 months, this guy might actually just be dead. But right now, he's beautiful, and that makes me happy. This guy I'm really, really excited about because he has all this new growth that's coming on him. So this is not a plant that you see very often. It's quite, you just don't see it very often. This one is Lepismium lawrenceanum. And out of all of the Lepismium, this one is definitely, I think, one that is one of the hardest to find. I just got very, very lucky, and I think that you know, someone was selling it on eBay. I got very lucky and I bought it the moment that I saw it. So it is a really interesting plant. You can see it's got this new growth on it. Very, very interesting. And I'm so happy to see it grow. This is not indicative of its it generally grows very long branches. These are just these little short stunted branches here. Here we have this crazy flush of Pfeiffera boliviana. Super cool. I struggle with this plant, so I'm happy to see some of them are, producing lots of new growth, and they're beautiful and green and healthy and happy. Here we can see Schlumbergera opuntioides, and this has been kind of annoying, but I'm hoping that they actually make it now. So this guy has been budding for like 2 months, except for the buds immediately just kind of dry up. So I don't know if we can see that little bud that's coming out of there? Yeah. And see if we come over here, these little buds coming out in different places. There you can see a little bud. And my hope is that it quits doing that now that it's outside and the air is humid and stuff. That is my hope, that he just stops doing that. More buds, also kiwi buds. This is kiwi treasure box. Had it for years and years and years and years. And I think it is just now decided to bud, so hopefully that works out because I desperately wanted to see that. This guy, one of my favorite plants. Truly, I love this guy. So this would be Selenocereus inermis, and it used to go under the name Selenocereus Weberocereus. I think that's how, I'm not sure how to have said that, but love this plant, always growing, lots of new snaky growth coming out, super cool. Same as the grafts that are actually up on the porch. This is a graft that I purchased. When you put Schlumbergera lutea subspecies bradii in higher light, it will start to flush red. So it starts to blush like this, and it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Really and truly the most beautiful epiphytic cacti. Absolutely stunning, beautiful, gorgeous. I have him turned this way because he started to blush like that indoors from the windows. We can go this way. So again, you can just see that there's just a line of all these. And some of these, like I said, some of them are hybrids that I bought. Some of them are my own seedlings, but I love watching them all grow. This crazy kook here. So there's a few of these. There's actually 3 of them. These were seedlings that were from Felcino Fairy crossed with chameleon. And I just love those seedlings. They're just putting out like new growth. They're in really high light. They're just having their best life right there. Here we have just like some of the smaller Schlumbergera. Like these guys, when they're inside, what happens is that they're in the windows and, they're hanging in those beautiful shelves that I made. And so, here we just see like this, they come outside and some of them do okay. It depends on where they're at in the house. So I think that someone wrote me a message. They wrote me an email, and I will kind of hit on this for a little bit. So for the Schlumbergera, some of these don't do so well. You can see like brown, crispy edges. There's something like some kind of odd kind of mottling appearance that happens on the branches. I very highly suspect that is spider mites. And even if it's not spider mites and it's something else, it doesn't really matter, because the number one thing that I can say about that is it is not in an appropriate environment for it to be healthy. So if you experience that with your Schlumbergera, you do not have them in the appropriate environment. So the guys, my plants that do that, it's because they are in a darker part of the house. It's a place where the heater is definitely running a little bit higher. So it's dark and it's dry, and they don't appreciate that. And they get crispy edges, they get weird mottling, and that is the kind of environment that definitely invites spider mites. I've got like rows of Schlumbergera underneath these things, and they're doing cool things. They're growing, they're budding, they're just doing crazy things. Here is one of my favorite unknowns. Absolutely gorgeous. So beautiful, beautiful things. This guy produced lots of flowers this year. Absolutely gorgeous. There's a flower that's opening for Disocactus philanthoides. Really pretty over there. There's more buds over here. Lots of little growth happening. Lots of fun. Down here again, more and more and more Schlumbergera. Lots of Schlumbergera. I hope that you've enjoyed looking at the cool, crazy, fun stuff in the garden with me. Thank you for watching, and happy cacti growing.